So very good night to you.
Yes, good evening to you, Dr. Fontaine. Welcome to our program, Real Talk. Real Talk has been a program introduced by the United Workers' Party, our social media program, which has been going on for the past 3 months. And so far, so good. The reviews have been good. And it's a pleasure to be on. Doc, you cannot believe it. We are already in March. What is happening? Just the other day, there, that 2026 started.
Yes. Time it's galloping indeed. It's galloping.
Yes, and let me just say good night to
Yeah.
everybody over to all Dominicans over the globe, to our Dominican diaspora, wherever you are, to our Dominican people, particularly Roseau Central and all the constituents and constituencies, caretakers, executive members, and every Dominican. Doc, it's like every day we hear something. By no means, Signal Ban was wrong. Shelly and his gang, when Shelly say every day something. And
Yes.
we just wish that these some things could be every time good things. But in life, you have sometimes positive things, sometimes you have negative things. You have things on the upturn and you have things on the downturn. And just as we chatting, how has it been over the weekend for you and the UWP team? And what are you hearing around? You can even talk about we hear about a fire and maybe give us some update on that. What you have been hearing. Tell us what is happening.
Well, indeed, it was an interesting weekend. We were able to spend some time in the valley. Very great outing, as you know. Loda is part of the Roseau Valley area, and on Friday we were able to spend quite some time there with the people of Loda. And Loda, interestingly enough, is one of those villages where so much is going on. You have the geothermal thing happening, you have the water, the hydro, electrification part of Dominic is also there. Then there is the cable car, which, by the way,
Yeah.
some very good progress is going on there. I see the visitor center looks like it's getting there,
That's
and a lot
good.
of work is still going on the actual cable that will take you all the way up to the lake, to the
Wow.
boiling lake. So that should be a very popular ride, especially for those who can stand the heights, because I can tell you it's it can be very daunting, when you see how high it is of the floor, it's very high
But remember, pay height.
over the
Pay height.
valleys, yeah. That's going along quite nicely. So it's one of those places that's really a hub in terms of our ecotourism product, in terms of our future development. Very interesting village. So it was great to spend time there with the people. Traditionally, that village, if you go back way into history, traditionally, they have supported the Labour Party, even when the Freedom Party was firmly entrenched between 1980 and 1995. Loda voted Labour. So they have quite a history of voting the Labour Party. So you have that's a kind of a traditional Labour stronghold, if you like, So it was great to have that conversation with the people and just talk to them about the future and what the United Workers' Party is offering, So we are really thankful for that opportunity and to be able to do that, So that was good. It's part of our ongoing efforts to go across Dominica. Every week we try to do a different constituency. So, and we are really thankful for the support that we're getting on the ground. It's very, very encouraging. In fact, it encourages us to keep going. Lots of great support on the ground, and people excited to see the party doing the work on the ground, and all of that as well as we prepare for big national meeting.
Get taste for rally these days. You get taste for rally, yeah.
I know, right? Yeah. So that's the national meeting that is scheduled for the 21st of March this month. So in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be in Layu, and we're encouraging all of Dominica to come out, and listen to the plans that we have. And interestingly enough, I'm sure you heard in Parliament last week that the Prime Minister was basically indicating his displeasure at the Electoral Commission. I believe that he is now calling for the Commission to return to the use of the birth certificate as a means of confirmation. It's something that we have been saying all along, but I guess now that it's coming from the Prime Minister, they will act. We wrote to them, we said it verbally, we had a press conference and we called for those very same things. We wrote directly to the Electoral Commission. We were completely ignored. But we're hoping now the better sense will prevail, because it is clear that, thousands, literally thousands of Dominicans who have been disenfranchised. In other words, these were individuals who would not be able to confirm their names on the list because they do not have the forms of ID that is being asked for. So it does appear, at least now, we are hearing something. So we expect some movement on that. We are also expecting some movement on the whole confirmation process itself, because we know that thousands of people have applied for confirmation, yet the list that we've seen, just a few hundred people. So there's a huge discrepancy between those who have applied for confirmation and those whose name come out on the list. Now, I don't understand why it's taking so long. I thought the whole process was automated. These are people, you verify their names, you verify they have a witness who comes with them, so their names already on the list. These individuals have verified their names, and yet month after month we are saying we are now into the fourth month, really, and we have seen very few names, when we know that thousands of Dominicans have in fact confirmed. So we are not sure what's happening there. We would urge the Electoral Commission to continue to work hard and more efficiently, because that's certainly not efficient, that process. Because if you continue like this, we'll get to October and we'll only have a couple thousand people registered going at that rate. So we absolutely need to get that fixed and set up, and we hope that this can in fact be done. All right. So we are very, very hopeful for that. In addition to that, so I just want to say that extend our sorrow, as it were, and of course condolences and sympathies. I look at the sympathies, really.
Yeah,
many persons who were impacted by a huge fire. We just received, in fact, we are just viewing a statement from the Fire and Ambulance Services of Dominica that indicates a total of 7 business places, or 7 buildings were severely damaged, got major damage. 7 buildings, and they've detailed, they've gone into much detail. We can just read some of that.
Yes, you can.
We certainly would like to extend, our sympathies to those who lost their businesses, and also the scores of persons, because these were a number of businesses were part of it, of the including Jolly's Pharmacy, a restaurant, another craft place, at least 5 or so businesses in that area that were destroyed. So that means the loss of jobs and everything that entails, and
that's correct.
It's going to just put increased hardships on persons. I don't believe we have workers' compensation here, where if you're out of job for those types of reasons, you get compensated. I don't know if the businesses will be able to compensate the workers, or if these are people who will find themselves without jobs tomorrow. And so it's a very troubling time, I'm sure, for a number of persons. So we certainly would like to extend, just our support for those individuals who have been so negatively impacted. So it's very interesting. They gave some very, very important information. They indicated that when they first responded to the fire, there were only 9 fire officers who responded, and I find that's for that 5-alarm fire, 9 fire officers. But that's what they said. And then later on, these 9 officers were joined by crews from Grand Bay and St. Joseph. But imagine having to drive from Grand Bay.
Along that distance, exactly.
That's a long distance. Eventually, they said that a total of 30 fire officers were involved in fighting the fire. I still find that for that size of fire, that seems to me to be a small number. But they were aided by bystanders and the police as well. And I noticed that one building was saved by a very brave gentleman. Video is surfacing. A very brave gentleman actually went up on the roof and use buckets of water to pour, because already that roof was coming alight, and people were passing him up buckets of water, and he was able to douse the flames on that building and actually save that particular building. So we want to pick up the very heroic Dominicans and firefighters and others who did their best to contain the fire, because it could have been a major disaster. It was still a major disaster, but it could have been a lot worse. So we are thankful. So the buildings that they said, 7 buildings that sustained significant damage and 3 minor damage. So they said that the building belonging to Singular Blomquist sustained damage to the roof and to the siding. A commercial building owned by Conrad McIntyre, and in that there was a business place, the Oasis of Elegance, complete damage of the first and second floors with the roof caving in. So that's a major damage on this one there, on this building. There was a craft shop that was owned by Conroy Allen. The roof of that one also caved in, and the building was completely destroyed. The building that was owned by Colbert Q, which housed CG United and Domlec, that sustained scorching damage to the northern side. A commercial building owned by Ken Robinson, which housed Craven Restaurant and was operated by Leuven Prosper, that was completely destroyed. Jolly's Pharmacy, which housed the business offices and the gym. These were severely destroyed by fire, while the pharmacy sustained mainly water damage. A Z1 store that was owned by tenant Wyman Gu. This building was also completely destroyed. The building which housed a bar, restaurant and bar, the One Pot Restaurant and Bar, that sustained scorching and minor fire damage. The building which houses ruins, and the ruins by is on the opposite side of the road. It's across from where the fire started. That building also sustained some scorching, as well as the Raffle building where Patty Shack is located. That also sustained some scorching on the first and second floors. So you can see it was a very serious fire, and also a Toyota vehicle was also completely destroyed. The vehicle that was owned by one of the business persons was completely destroyed as well. So that's a very serious. I'm sure the damages run into the millions of dollars, and we just hope that persons will covered and insured, and that they'll be taken care of. But I know it must be extremely painful to go through that kind of, and traumatic to go through that kind of experience. So we certainly extend our best to those who were involved in this disastrous fire last night.
Yes, Doc, and that's a synopsis. But if I were to go back to where you started, just to give my little piece on the various areas that you have touched on, just as you talk about Loda now being the home of many tourism attractive sites, that has always been happening. And even before, prior to the cable car project, we had what they call the aerial tram. And the aerial tram in the past stayed about 10 years in existence, just a little above 10 years. And that project alone is to employ a significant amount of Dominicans, and something like about $2 million, had been circulated in the economy during that time. So we have always seen these kinds of projects employing a large number of Dominicans, and that even in the community itself, when people since get paid on a Friday or fortnightly, then the village itself is swinging, because people have restaurants, they have bars, they sell their drinks, people socialize. So by and large, the community of Loda normally would have its fair share in terms of the pie of the cake in that. You spoke about the Electoral Commission, and we welcome the announcement, not just by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister have nothing to do with electoral business. Electoral business is divorced from government business. All government has to do is to ensure that it makes the necessary resources available so that the electoral office or the Electoral Commission can act independently as prescribed and stipulated by the Constitution of Dominica. What I can say, though, with respect to the tardiness, with respect to the amount of production, with respect to the ID cards, I think they should now institute what they call production units, whereby once the applications are made, because once you go through the application process, you get through. You get a receipt saying that you have gone through the process. All you have to do now, they will call you because they tell you do not throw the receipt, hold it. So when you are called, you have to present this receipt to just collect your ID card. What I'm saying, from the day that you did that, every week they should have what batch numbers, sign off, reconciling how many people came to apply or to make applications, and reconcile it to the amount of applications you have, and you send it down to production unit to take care of that. And in 2 weeks' time, or within 2 weeks, one should have his or her voter ID card in his hand. So that's a recommendation we're giving them. And as you're talking about the fire, it is very important that we take notes, because some time ago I made the point on a program, and I've made this point many times, that we've had and we continue to have what they call fire hazards in the city of Roseau. And it's no fault of nobody, because before we used to have a lot of wooden houses in Roseau, particularly the residential part of Roseau. Now you have combination of residential and commercial. But what is happening is that you have some areas that are still largely in wooden structures, but they are in a derelict situation where the houses are dilapidated and they can be a fire hazard. I've made the point on many programs numerously, and I said, look, I've said on numerous occasions that the city council should get in contact with the various owners with houses with that are wooden in structure, but people are not living in them, and they should get away so that they could actually demolish these houses and get rid of the wooden materials, because these long-term materials, they have chemicals in them that if a fire should break out, then we'll expect a large kind of damage in Roseau. So I hope by then we can just learn from that, because notwithstanding what we have experienced, it can happen again, and so we need to really do that. So this is the problem. So I hope that lessons learned going forward, that we can, sorry, the phone is just going off. Sorry, what's happened there. We can have the city council work with the various landowners and to have those derelict houses get completely demolished and to not pose a further threat. Because what we see happen, we don't want it to happen again, and put those lands into good use with respect to commercialize them. They could be used for parking lots. They could be used for merchandising, for craft selling and these things. We have made these points, little points like that, so we can go forward with it. But Doc, thanks for this preamble. I think you've done well. I mean, you're on top of things. You can see that's a man on the ground. And I noticed this morning you have also sent a message out on behalf of the United Workers' Party. I heard you actually, empathizing with those who have had loss with respect to the fire. And that's a commendable job. And the United Workers' Party, of course, is in a good position where we believe when we take the reins of office, then we'll have to look at certain things, how we can help people in Roseau to actually restructure, to go and work with the city council and to work with homeowners to see how we can make Roseau more attractive place in terms of enhance Roseau, to give it the kind of aesthetics that it really needs. We cannot get that under this government. We cannot get that. They have been disastrous and they remain disastrous. But Doc, interesting, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Because
so just before we switch gears, there is a query that someone raised about what you were just talking about. Okay. And I think we can respond to it, because you indicated that it's the Prime Minister that has to provide the resources. And the person was asking, why is it that it's the Prime Minister who has to provide the funding and not the Parliament? And that I think is a mistake under our system, because we have seen where resources have been deliberately withheld from the Electoral Commission by the Prime Minister. It happened, for example, in July of 2019, it was before the elections, when the Electoral Commission announced that they were going to have a re-registration. They were denied the resources. So that is something that has to be fixed. Obviously, it should not be left up to the Prime Minister, who is the head of a particular party. And given the way that politics is played in Dominica, you certainly cannot entrust any Prime Minister with that. It has to be, as you said, this funding should be automatic. It should be voted on by Parliament, and it should not be touched. No Prime Minister should be the one to determine whether or not the resources are funneled to the Electoral Commission. So that obviously is a flaw in our system. and
Yeah.
something that must be fixed. Just put
Yeah,
that way.
and just to let the person know that it wasn't a mistake, I'm correct when I say is the government right now based on how it is to furnish them with the money. Remember to when the exercise was given to Sir Dennis Byron, he was given a consultancy to do the necessary framework and development of it and to do the certain amendments, and so he actually finished the exercise. Most of what he recommended really didn't come in. Some of what came in. But then remember, it is the government now had to furnish them with the money to actually get the machine and put things in order, the staffing system. And it really should not be the case. It should be generating its own money. And I think, yes, you are correct. But as we speak, I'm not saying anything wrong because I can tell you person right now that is how it is and it should not have been. That's why I said earlier, forget Mr. Skerritt. I don't want to hear about Mr. Skerritt. It's the Electoral Commission that is given its own rights, its independent rights under the Constitution to execute and implement its program, notwithstanding the government is the one furnishing the necessary resources to let them go forward. They have no allegiance to government. They're supposed to be an independent creature of the Constitution, and so they're supposed to operate independently. So that being clarified, we get the point, and Caller, you're right. It should not have been the government. It make it be the government as if it's he, but they're not fixing it for him. They have to fix it for the people, not for him. But Doc, we are moving away now a little bit from it. Notwithstanding all of the problems Dominica have been experiencing and what we are going through, and we just talk about a fire, we already touched on that. It even, bad economy, that situation even dire. But yeah, what is happening to us? For some time, you have explained well to the Dominican people, and you have been on this issue from the time, from its inception, when the U.S. government gave our government here some benchmarks. They had to meet certain measures with respect to the CBI, and subsequently, because they had not met it within the stipulated time, then some sort of measure came about, and it seemed to me that they are still non-compliant, and that is why we are still continuing to suffer from it. And when the proclamation was read, Dominicans suffer with respect to not getting visas at the time. Now we are hearing Dominican Antigua, only Dominican Antigua in the Caribbean so far. I haven't read anybody's, and you'll explain that to us. Right now we're in that they are only going to be allowed, these two countries are going to be allowed to get 3 months visa with a one entry, which means that if you happen to be successful to get a visa from the U.S. Embassy, you'll get a 3 months visa, but it's a one entry, which means if you have to go back again, you'll have to reapply. Doc, can you?
Yeah, but you should also add it gets worse. You also have the bond that is attached to it.
You're coming to
Anywhere
that?
from
You're going to
5,000 to
explain. You are going to explain. I'm
15,000
going to leave it for you to explain.
US dollars.
I'm
So
saying
it
to
makes
you,
it
I'm saying to
yeah.
you, what do you make of that, Doc? Moving from one point where we've been penalized. I'm talking about the citizenry. Generally, I call it a sort of penal measure on us because the government side, they can travel under the Geneva Convention as diplomats. They can go anywhere they want. They will get that kind of accommodation. What about the ordinary citizen? What does that spell for the ordinary citizen of Dominica?
Look, when you thought it could not get worse, it has just gotten worse. I mean, a freeze or a pause on visa applications is one thing. But now to move beyond it and say, well, we're no longer going to give Dominica and Antigua 10-year visitor visas and multiple entry. You're going to get, as you said, 3 months visas, single entry. It means every time, if you're a businessman, you have to travel several times to the US. Each time you want to travel, you have to go to Barbados. That has its huge costs already, because remember, to get to Barbados, a return ticket from Dominica normally is close to $1,000, a return visit, a return trip. So that's $1,000, let's just say, because you have accommodation. So let's just say, for argument's sake, just to go is $1,000. Then you have to come up with between $5,000 and $15,000 for the bond, and you have to do that multiple times. That's a huge burden. But what is striking in all of this, and when I heard this, I could not believe. I had to listen and read the document again a second time and a third time to really see that's what they were saying. I thought that only applied to visitor visas. It applies to student visas as well. So imagine you're a student going to study in the United States and you're only given a 3-month visa to go to study. It applies to F1 visas. It also applies to J visas. The J visas now, these are very interesting because I was a recipient of a J visa when I went to study in the United States because I was given a scholarship and I had to work with the school. Since I was allowed to teach, I had to get a J visa because that allows you as a student to work. If you have an F visa, you're restricted. You normally cannot work with an F
Yeah,
visa
that's for the
unless it's
school.
within the school itself. But a J visa allows you to take on added employment. That too is subject to the 3 months, and I don't know how that's going to work. So effectively, we can say that students and those who are hoping to get J1 research visas and so on, postdoctoral studies and all of that, we can say definitively that they're going to have a problem because with a 3 month visa, I don't know that the school is even going to allow you to enter. Because it means if you go in with a 3 month visa to school, then you have to come out, reapply, go back for the second term. That's going to be extremely costly for the students, hugely inconvenient. And the question that everyone is asking is why? Why it is that it's only Dominica and Antigua and Barbuda that has been subject to those restrictions. And these are draconian. These are, in other words, if you do not have a visa, you can kiss the United States goodbye, go to the United States, because I think it's just going to be just completely really too costly, one. And for many people, coming up with over $40,000 to just set aside just to go to the United States might be an issue. You have restrictions as to which cities you can go to, you can enter and exit. So if, for example, you're going to Alaska, you're forced to go to either New York or you can't even go to Miami. It's not even on the list, I don't think. New York, Chicago, and a few other places. So you have to go all the way out of your way, added cost. So it's just a huge mess, and Dominica is at the center of this. And the question is why. And I believe that this is tied very much to our governance, and that's why tonight we describe our program tonight as the deterioration in the governance levels in Dominica, because that's what we have. We have a government who is completely uncaring. And I say uncaring because with all of these concerns that we have, our prime minister had a chance to meet with the Marco Rubio, the foreign secretary for the United States, in St. Kitts last week. And when he was asked, he said, well, I don't normally raise issues concerning Dominica. I'm like, this is a man that has been paid to be the prime minister of this country. And his response to a question as to whether or not he had raised concerns, you think that these are major concerns to the Dominican public. Sick people not being able to go to the United States, students not being able to travel to the United States, the fact that green cards have been suspended, the fact that the whole visa process is now suspended. All of these issues, and you're saying that you have nothing really to plead or to talk on behalf of the Dominican public. I thought that was just that is someone who is completely out of, completely out of it. Let's just be blunt and say it as it is. The prime minister completely out of it to say that he has nothing really to raise on the behalf of the people when you have those major issues. I mean, you're talking about the United States, where 90% of between 90 and 95% of persons who travel from Dominica travel to the United States. So this is not insignificant. The majority of Dominicans in the diaspora, they live in the United States. Probably 5-10 times the amount of persons who live in England, for example, who live in the United States. So to just dismiss that, just like that, I found that was very disturbing. And so I think what it shows is someone who is really tired and who really needs to exit the scene, and make way for persons who have the interests of Dominica at heart. I believe the prime minister is tired. He's run his course after 20 years, the pressures of running this country, the dismal failure, the fact that he's destroyed the agriculture sector, he's destroyed the manufacturing sector, the fact that we've lost jobs in the thousands, the fact that thousands of our young people have been forced to go overseas for work and so on. I believe all that is having its toll on the Prime Minister. And more recently, the issues of the CBI, the pressures, the fact that he's given our passports to crooks and criminals. We are now told that, Iranian agents and Hezbollah, all of these persons having the Dominican passports and so. So all of those pressures, I believe, is clear, have been brought to bear on the shoulders of this Prime Minister, and he's incapable, I believe, of handling the dictates of the office. And I think it's time that he realizes that. And I believe he's realized it, and that's the reason why he had out of his own free will, had announced that he was going to make way in April of 2025. And unfortunately, he changed his mind. But I think he would have done Dominica a great service if he had decided to do as he had promised and demit office in last year. Would have been a lot better, I believe, now for it. So let me just play this particular piece of information. It's not very long. It's just about 3 minutes.
No problem.
And let's listen to it, because I think it's very instructive, I believe, in terms of what we are experiencing, and it's unique. And when after we're through, we can discuss the why of it. Why is it that Dominica and Antigua, the only two countries in all of the Caribbean islands who have been faced with these added measures? That is something that we absolutely have to ask ourselves. So let's listen. All right.
Dominica and Antigua and Barbuda can no longer obtain 10-year U.S. visitor visas. Updated State Department reciprocity schedules for both countries now show B1 or B2 visas capped at 3 months and a single entry, down from 120 months with unlimited entries. St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and Grenada are unaffected. Their reciprocity schedules still show the old terms. The downgrade extends beyond tourist and business travel. Student visas, F1 and F-, exchange visitor visas, J1 and J2, intra-company transfers, L1 and L2, and religious worker visas, R1 and R2, all show the same restrictions for both countries. Diplomatic categories escaped. A1, A2, and G1 through G4 visas remain at 60-month validity with multiple entries. Neither country holds an E1 or E2 treaty with the United States. Shorter validity is not the only new friction. The U.S. Embassy in Bridgetown, which handles visa applications for all Eastern Caribbean states, now requires that approved B1 or B2 applicants from both countries post a bond of up to $15,000 US. Consular officers set the amount at the interview. For someone who once held a decade-long visa and paid a single application fee, the arithmetic has changed entirely. Every trip means a new application, a new bond, and another appearance in Barbados. No official State Department statement links the reciprocity change to President Trump's December 2025 proclamation, which imposed partial entry restrictions on 20 countries. Reciprocity is supposed to reflect how foreign governments treat American travelers, not Washington's policy concerns about those governments. But the timing makes that distinction hard to maintain. Antigua secured a partial reprieve before year-end. Washington agreed to honor visas issued before December 31st, 2025. Dominica has no such arrangement and has faced the full scope of restrictions since January 1st. On January 21st, 2026, the Trump administration froze immigrant visa processing for 75 countries on public charge grounds. All 5 Caribbean citizenship by investment nations were on that list. None of this arrived without warning. A State Department memo in June 2025 placed 4 Caribbean CBI jurisdictions on a draft travel ban list, giving them 60 days to address concerns about passport vetting and residency requirements. Caribbean prime ministers fought back publicly, defending their due diligence standards while pledging reforms. St. Kitts responded with mandatory residency requirements for CBI applicants. Antigua signaled it was considering extending its physical presence requirement from 30 to 90 days over 5 years. A 180-day review cycle written into the December proclamation allows restrictions to be modified or lifted if affected countries improve screening and information sharing. No rollback has materialized for either country. Neither the government of Antigua and Barbuda nor the government of Dominica had issued a public response to the reciprocity change at the time of publication. This episode first appeared as an article.
All right, so here we have it. So very, very telling indeed, you know. And,
yes, I was going to react. I was going to react to that because, Doc, that is very serious. This is not AI generated. This is real news, and we've heard that Dominica particularly has not given any response to this, and these actions which have been taken by the US did not come without notification or notice or warning, which means that the government knew and they knew for why. But Doc, don't we have diplomatic missions overseas? Where's the ambassador to the UN? Have we heard from him? Why? Does the Prime Minister know something that we Dominicans do not know and is hiding from us? Because, Doc, it cannot be. The United States wake up tonight, wake up next morning, they go sleep tonight, wake up next morning and come and impose those kind of measures on a country. No, there is something that is in this thing that the government is aware of. And I notice, I don't want to speculate, but in the absence of information, one is left to speculate. And so I'm speculating now. Since the abduction or arrest, or how you want to call it, of Maduro, right? I suspect Mr. Maduro may be saying more things and implicating more people I don't know. But it appears that is the biggest thing after the arrest of Maduro that Dominica has faced. Now, Dominicans always had their dream, collect their little money, and by every year, every 2 years, take a little trip to the United States, make their little barrel. Make their little barrel come down, they take a trip, they satisfy, they go about. Are we now trapped because the economy is not doing well, right? And Dominica's programs are now given to more foreigners than Dominicans themselves. Dominicans are second-class citizens in their home, and I'll be reading some of the comments from the audience there in a while. But just tell us, is that something Mr. No is not telling? I have not heard from the Department of Mission. Please, case in point, for example, the to the UN ambassador to the UN. What is going on? Are you there, Doc? Well,
yes, I am. And
there is something that the Prime Minister knows that we don't know, and not forthcoming with those get to let them rest assured it's just an interim, and he has to say to he's not himself. Actually hurting Dominica the other day that no, he did not do that. He's the Prime Minister of the country. He has to travel, whether it's to the United States, he has to, based on certain events and projects exist for leaders of the world. So he take any measure. If you know, I mean maybe is there something the Prime Minister? Now get some. Let me read some of what. Yeah, I every of government is being to foreign, waiting on to negotiate the Americans. Probably yes. I wonder who is that foreigner? Dominica is worst of the worst. Dominica is worst. Some the Prime Minister must go. We're not giving him attention there tonight. Now he has to answer the Dominicans. And one other person saying, why does it seem like these visa changes are targeting Dominica and Antigua? What about these other countries? What about these two countries that the US government is so anxious about? So that's a question again. And someone is saying, thanks to Skerrit for this mess we are finding ourselves in. But some people still say we love our PM. There's more to come. And this government has no idea of what they are doing. We are doomed. And while we are doomed, this country is doomed for everything. So I read that one already. Every function of government is being outsourced to foreign interests. He might just be waiting for someone or foreigner to speak on Dominica's behalf. And you are correct. You have said that before. And that's why one of the 10 pillars is that we want to restore hope in this country. We want to ensure that we maintain and retain most of our youth who have been running away from this country because there's nothing good for them here. There's nothing offered to them. There is no stake. Their grandfathers, their fathers, their mothers, their uncles, their nenen, their powers have been faced with victimization by this government. We cannot understand that we have CBI monies and it's only a few persons that are benefiting from it. I know about the Pareto's law in economics, where 20% of the wealth is controlled, where 20% of the persons of the people control 80% of the wealth. Is that a Pareto system there? Is that law really happening in Dominica? So that something is afoot.
It is, and one of our listeners raised a very important question: why Antigua and Dominica? It is very, very clear to me that there is something that two countries have in common that is not equally applicable to the other, especially to our OECS neighbors, because St. Lucia has a CBI program which does not apply to St. Lucia. St. Kitts has a CBI program which does not apply to St. Kitts. Grenada has a CBI program which does not apply to them. St. Vincent, no CBI program, but it also did not apply to them. So what do we have in common? And I think the common denominator there, and I'll say it publicly tonight, the common denominator there is clearly China. And you may be aware, for example, that there were plans in Antigua to actually give the Chinese a free port, where the Chinese would have their own customs, their own police, and so on. And a significant portion of the island was going to go to the Chinese, and that was something that was put forward by the Gaston Brown administration. And we know our own issues in Dominica as it concerns with the Chinese, the building of the airport, the building of our schools, of our roads, of our hospital. The Silk Road projects are being implemented here in Dominica. And now we have concerns around the possible mining for copper in Dominica as well. So it has, I believe, everything to do with the Chinese relations, and also the stated, if you like, the stated posture or position of the Trump administration that they're going to revisit the Monroe Doctrine. And in fact, if you listen very carefully to Marco Rubio when he spoke to CARICOM leaders, he was very clear that the sphere of influence of Washington extends to the Caribbean basin, basically saying that the Caribbean islands should be wholly, completely influenced by the Americans. That talks to American hegemony, the fact that the Americans are not comfortable with another power, especially a competing power as China, playing in their backyard. And they've been very clear. You would recall, for example, that they told Venezuela very clearly that they must get rid of the Chinese in Venezuela. It is possible that same message was, I say possible, I don't have the proof of it, but that very same message was delivered to the governments of Dominica and Antigua and Barbuda. And in the absence of any positive response, we have been punished. The problem about that is that the public, the general public, are the ones that are paying the very severe burden. I mean, imagine our students who for generations have been benefited from study overseas. The US arguably has some of the best universities in the world. I was very fortunate to be able to attend one in the United States. And imagine now, I would not be able to do that if I was looking to go to study right now. So that is a problem that we have. And the question is whether or not our government and the government of Antigua and Barbuda, but I can't really talk for them. I think I can just talk about our own government here in Dominica, whether our government will continue to toe this line and will continue to get punished. And that's exactly what it is. And the question then becomes, how do you respond? As a responsible government, how do you respond to that pressure coming from the United States, which is insisting on its sphere of influence, which is insisting that it does not want any of its competitors in its backyard playing any major role. And we see that clearly the Chinese have played a huge role in Dominica, in the prospects of the airport as well, and just a tremendous role that they're playing. And these are the countries where they're doing. And if you're listening and you're wondering, let me just inform you, if you're not aware, that St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, these countries never shifted their allegiance from Taiwan. So these countries never shifted. In other words, they have diplomatic relations with Taiwan and not with China. So I just want to make that very clear, that people are aware of that. That those three countries, again, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and St. Kitts and Nevis, these three countries do not have diplomatic relations with China. They have diplomatic relations with the Republic of China, which is Taiwan.
Right. And, one would argue, and look, somebody does making the point that probably you have good universities in Europe, and maybe that's one of the other areas that we probably need to exploit to see whether or not. But the point is coming to you, the long-standing relationship where we have been given scholarships for students from Dominica to enter universities in the United States that we were talking about. All these things are affected.
Indeed, so and I mean, I'm smiling at one of, because I made a statement. I said that the US is one of the best places, and this person is saying that is nonsense. But the reality is, the overwhelming majority of our Dominican students study in the United States. So if it's not among the best places to study, why it is that our students continue to go there?
Right.
You would think that we would want to go to where we have the best schools, right?
That's right.
And it is clear. I mean, the US and that is in fact the case. Some of the best universities in the world are located in the United States. I don't think that's even a point to argue.
Right. And I will speculate as you have been doing, because in the absence of information, one is left to speculate, and I don't think we should be accused of speculating since we do not cross lines. I can say too, Dominica has an MOU with China, and Dominicans do not know what is in this MOU, because I don't think or recall the government ever had any meeting around indicating or telling Dominicans, whether it's in the parliament or outside of the parliament, that look, we have an MOU and it spells out 3 main area, 2 main area, or there are certain pillars that we have to meet and objectives. We have not heard that, and so I speculate in. So with China, with that road and belt initiative around the world and the dollar diplomacy, China might well have caught some islands in their corner, because remember, they want their vote is politics. The geopolitics is real, and sometimes you want a position in the world and you need votes. So these countries, while it is that you could put a little butter in their mouth and give them something, at the time you want something at the UN endorsed in your interest, they could just vote for you. And based on the whaling aspect with Japan, you see how Japan had a little influence and going around doing what they had to do, putting fisheries around the area, boosting up certain, fisheries, industries there and there. And when it comes for voting for continue whaling, Japan is to actually get that vote. Now, something. But I'm saying to say this is that, notwithstanding all of this, I don't know how a country could be caught and cannot untie itself from, if at all, is a bad thing. And probably at the time, Dominica and the other countries, well, particular Antigua and Barbuda government, they thought at the time it was a good thing to receive from China to hurt America. But in the long run, probably they were hurting themselves. And today, look at what is happening. Dominicans don't wake up to want to go to China, notwithstanding we have diplomatic relations with China.
And visa free entry.
Notwithstanding, and that free entry visa, notwithstanding we have an MOU, notwithstanding we have diplomatic relations, everyone wants to wake up to go to America. So again, you see where the Dominican people interest is. So if you are talking and working in the interest of the people, so you should know where people should be thinking. So where people are thinking, that is where your policies should be framed to protect their interest. And so it's a sad mistake. And I really don't know what is going on, but this government really has expired, and it's time they come clean the Dominican people, or else Dominicans will suffer and continue to suffer. We have some more remarks there. Does Kerry think China will protect him, or is he hoping that the CARICOM collective will sort of cover him from a full onslaught by the US? Change is not just an option, it is a must, because we are at the crossroads. That because so-called educated people like our leaders is pushing us to the US, but we can align more closely with those who actually help us. That is a fact, but you have to align with those two where people feel more comfortable going. The language, the Chinese language is a big barrier, not that you can establish diplomatic relations with China. What more can the people do? You think Dominicans go to China and make barrel? You know what it is to ship a barrel from China to Dominica? You'd never
You
see
know,
it
I
today.
mean, you know, we talk about that, but let's just talk about the Chinese relationship to Dominica. I
Right.
mean, this individual is suggesting that we should actually be pushing to countries that help us. The question is, are we getting enough help from the Chinese? We import millions of dollars of Chinese goods into Dominica. What's our trade balance? Do we export anything? Are the Chinese buying anything from Dominica? That's a very basic question. I'm sure, as small as our exports are, we export something to the United States, you know. But what do we export to China? Huge trade imbalance. You know, here in Dominica, the Chinese entrepreneurs and small business owners have taken up practically all of the retail space that our formerly our retailers, indigenous Dominican retailers occupy. They've taken over that space almost completely. Every other shop in Roseau is owned by a Chinese. So the question is, are they truly helping us, or are they helping themselves?
So they're taking away from
And I don't blame them. I don't blame them, because we have not done
us.
enough, I believe, within the government to push strongly enough for our own people. I'll give you a very good example of that. I remember a few years ago, myself and Mr. Linton, we went to visit the then Chinese ambassador. And when we were talking to him about when the United Workers' Party getting into office, that was before the 2014 elections, and that has stayed with me all of those years. And we were discussing the whole idea of, you know, using or exporting to China. In other words, having the Chinese take our products. And the Chinese ambassador told us that, for example, he loves the coal pot soap. And every time he goes back to China, he takes a couple of cartons for his friends that he gives as gifts to his friends. So we said, no, we need more. We want it to be where China actually opens up that option, the opportunity to allow our soaps and other products like that to make it into the Chinese market. And the ambassador said he had never received that request from the government of Dominica. That was the first time it had been put to him the way we put it to him. You know, so I believe that's why I say I can't blame the Chinese. I don't believe that this government has been fighting hard enough for the people of Dominica. And that is where a United Workers' Party government will fight for the people of Dominica. We will want to insist that we have to rebalance our trade with China, and we can do it. There are products that we are producing here in Dominica that we believe can find its way on China's shelves. We need to reverse that imbalance. We don't mind
Yes.
taking in the cheap Chinese imports, but we want Dominica products on the shelves, and especially China is having a growing middle class, people who can afford to have products imported, if you like, exotic products imported from islands like ours, our Bayrum products, our essential oil products, our soaps and so on that has been done. And I see so much wonderful manufacturing items coming out of Dominica these days. A lot of people are doing a lot of things, but they're not getting help from this government. They're not being pushed. They're not being spoken for. And that is where a United Workers' Party government will be different from what we have in government today. We will push hard, Soso, very, very hard, to have our products in China. We'll push very, very hard to be able to provide the support for our businesses. And that is one of our 10 pillars, the development of a manufacturing sector. When we manufacture those goods, we want it on Chinese shelves, and we will push
Right.
very hard for that. We have to reverse this imbalance. It cannot be this one-way traffic, you know. And even if you take the cost of the stadium, the cost of the hospital, which is where the two things that they funded, because we funded our own roads, we funded the state house and so on that they built. I believe we are funding some of the schools that they are building. So if you take the cost of those things that they've built and weight against our imports on a yearly basis, we're still in a huge imbalance, and that needs to be corrected. And that is what we will do as a responsible government.
Yes, and we're going to work real, real hard, and we trust your judgment, because you are not in government, and every week you ensure you remove the wastage in some farmers' field based on the amount you take the capacity for the market. You're actually in business where you remove some of the wastage that most of the products will have stayed in the field and you ship it out. You're not in government, you're doing that. I don't want to see when you're in government running the show that things are going to happen. And I agree with you that, we have to now agree that, yes, we have established diplomatic relations, but now we should be talking about establishing trade relations. And there's an opportunity for Dominica to get into the trade aspects of its relationship with other countries, including China and elsewhere. And by the way, so far, I can tell you, while we're talking and we're talking China, we have done more of our exports into the US market. Even Dexia was shipping dashings to the US. So, by and large, in St. Thomas and the places there, we still send much of our agricultural produce to these countries, US-based countries. So again, the benefit of our people, you could see where the benefits are really striking from the US countries. And there's nothing against China. China is a superpower. But if we can establish trade relations with them and have many of our products from Dominica shipped to China, then it wouldn't be a bad thing. So there's another thing saying the Americans are patiently waiting for Skerrit to exit politics to be dealt with for his alleged crimes against Dominica, and that's why he's desperate to cling on to power. Skerrit has to answer to the Dominicans one day, and he must answer, though. He must answer because accountability is
what we're reckoning.
Oh yes, all the time is a reckoning that, and
absolutely.
You did not get power, and I don't know if it was power. You are elected to serve people, not to serve yourself.
And I mean, I just want to see this gentleman. I want to see this prime minister fight on behalf of his people. Just put some fight. I mean, we've not even been addressed. The prime minister has not even addressed Dominicans on this visa issue. Like in a very significant way. He's not even addressed that issue. He has not pushed back in terms of opening up the Chinese market for us, or even getting, the Chinese are good at manufacturing stuff, and they export. Can you get at least one or two factory shells in Dominica where the items can be brought in boxes and packed? I remember a time we used to manufacture stoves and fridges here in Dominica. You remember that? They had a business place up by the St. Gerald Hall that they would manufacture those things. They would bring them down into pieces, but they would assemble them there. The Chinese are good at this. You mean you cannot negotiate to have one or two factories here in Dominica that will employ several hundred people that could do that, so that you cut off the cost of transportation and you'll be able to sell to the other Caribbean islands? I believe that this government has simply not been fighting hard enough on the behalf of the Dominican public. And that's the reason why the Dominican public must understand that the next election, if they're going to get out of that rut that this country is in, that they have to vote out this Labour Party. That's the only way. That's the only way. You have to put into place a party that is responsible and that cares deeply about the Dominican public. And I believe that is what we offer. That's one of the major differences between a United Workers' Party government and a Dominican Labour Party government. We care about the people of Dominica. We'll fight on behalf of the people of Dominica. Where there are now no opportunities, we'll create those opportunities. Where there are now no roads, we will open those routes that we can, increase our trade, increase our manufacturing, put people to work. If you have that mindset, you will get things done. But if you have the mindset that, we're okay as we are, we can destroy agriculture, we can destroy manufacturing, interest. And talking about that society, I don't know if you saw a post from the BVI Premier. The BVI Premier met our Prime Minister and he posted something on his Facebook page with a picture, smiling, shaking the hands of...
Oh, I saw this picture.
And giving him a big thank you, telling him, thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, for all the people that from Dominica that have come to our shores. They are contributing tremendously to our country. He was thanking the Prime Minister for sending our young people to the BVI, and he's saying, they're doing a great job. They're very productive. They're doing what, and he's very happy to have them. These are young people who we need in Dominica, and that's why, coming back to our 10 pillars, that is one of our major pillars to attract our young people back to Dominica. And how do you attract them? You attract them through the creation of jobs, creation of opportunities, because the majority of those young persons, when they go to the BVI and other countries in the Caribbean, they do get opportunities to work. So we're going to create the opportunities here in Dominica. They'll go to the BVI, but they'll go on holidays because they're getting good paying jobs here in Dominica. And that is what we want. We are going to attract. That is a major part of what the United Workers' Party plan. We are going to attract our young people back to Dominica because we need them working in the factories. We need them working in the manufacturing sector, in our essential oil industry, that we can build a unique essential oil industry with all of the patchouli, the bay leaf, the lemongrass, the vetiver, all of those things that we have here in Dominica can build a world-class essential oil this industry. We want to young people. In other words, so we want to mint a few millionaires in Dominica.
That's right.
Because we believe we have the resources here in this country that can provide the opportunities. What has been lacking over all of those years is the lack of foresight, the lack of vision of this government. Right. So now that we have a United Workers' Party government that has the vision for what needs to be done, the resources are there. We just have to find a way to get this into the hands of individuals overseas. And we will do that. We will get our young people back in Dominica, and they will thank us for it, because that is a major, major plank of our 10 pillars. Yes. Keeping our young people in Dominica and causing those who are working overseas to come back to Dominica in large numbers. We believe that will happen, and that's why we're excited. That's why we're doing what we're doing, Soso. Great excitement about the future of this country under a United Workers' Party government.
Yes, a bright future ahead. And one person is saying there, we don't want to hear about problems, we want to hear about solutions. And you have been giving solutions here. I'm thanks for that, caller. You have actually, that's a great point, and you have been hearing solutions, not just tonight, but you have been hearing solutions all along. Someone is saying there, we in Dominica need a non-partisan government because our loyalty should be to country, not to party colors. Too often division holds us back, while real issues, jobs, healthcare, and agriculture are problems. Yes, but caller, you have to understand the Constitution allows for political parties to participate in a democratic process, which we call elections. And with that, the party that attracts the majority will govern. So until that system changes, then your point is good. Maybe it can be worked out in the future. Look at it. Could be a debate going forward. But as we speak, that's how we are allowed to operate based on our Constitution. And somebody's saying there again, oh, I have a big one there. Dominican believes that the Chinese are lending money out of the goodness of their heart. Our governments are clinging to the Chinese because they are money. They are money without regulations. The US and other institutions carry strict regulation with the money they give to mitigate government corruption. China doesn't care about that. The view that China is helping is a very myopic one, in my view. Doc, your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, my problem is not what they're necessarily doing, but what more can be done, And I believe that at the end of the day, a government is responsible for looking after the interests of its people. So I don't blame the Chinese. They have a huge population. That's one way that they control the population, get them out of China and in other countries. That's fine. I have no problems with that. Okay. I, as a Dominican, I want what's in the best interest of my country. And what's in the best interest of Dominica is to ensure that we have a manufacturing sector, to ensure that we have an essential oil sector, a water industry, that we can be manufacturing goods and that we can export. And one of our trade partners in terms of exports will become the Chinese. That's what I'm interested in. At the end of the day, if we can establish that, then we'll be doing well by our people. So it's a question of working on behalf of the Dominican public. It's a question of ensuring that we adhere to a 10-point plan. And that's the reason why I hope the Dominican public are getting more au courant with our 10-point plan, because we believe that our 10 pillars to shared progress and prosperity, at the end of the day, it's about empowering our Dominican public. Because when all of these young people leave Dominica, they go overseas with a dream. a dream of working and making money and moving. At one point, Dominica used to have a middle class. That middle class is now almost gone, almost extinct. We want to once more have a middle class, once more have people with good paying jobs. We talked last week, I think it was, about the fact that the salaries are so low in Dominica and the cost is so high. And so probably next week we'll talk about one of the problems. We'll continue. We had a very important discussion about the high cost of living. I want us to continue that discussion.
Yes, we
I
promise
want
that.
to remind the Dominican public, for example, that in the last budget, the government imposed an extra $10,000 on the young people who want to bring a little car in
Inside,
so that
yeah.
they can drive around Dominica. Extra $10,000. That has effectively put the purchase of a car out of reach for a substantial number of Dominicans. And the question is, why would a government do that to its young people in particular? So, sometimes people say you just like to criticize, but these are the realities that we are faced with. And when you confront people with these realities, say, oh, you're lying, or the fact of the matter is, we have an extra $10,000 that have been placed on the purchase of a vehicle, so that it is now effectively out of reach of our young people. And that's a very serious problem. And that's the reason why so even before we do the full reform that we have promised, we'll rescind that $10,000 on day one of a new administration. That has to go. There is absolutely no reason for that. That additional tax burden has been placed on the people of Dominica. That will be removed as part, or even before we unfold our plan for economic and tax reform in Dominica. That one will go. It's
yes.
just unnecessary, and it is needlessly preventing our young people from, at least, and having a car should not be something of luxury. It should be seen more as a necessity. Imagine you're a nurse, you're on a night shift, you're not able to drive to work and drive back when you're done. You're a police officer, you don't want to be out there on the road, hiking, or I call it farming for rides. I mean, these are basic things, these are basic necessities, given that we don't have a well-organized public bus system in Dominica. So these are some of the things that we are looking at. Again, it shows that we a government that cares about the people of Dominica, and you will see it. You will see it by our actions, and that's one of the actions that we will take on behalf of the Dominican public. So what we want the Dominican public to do is to judge us by our actions. Judge us by not only what we plan now, but what we will do when we take office. And at the end of the day, you will see that we're not just talking, but we are committed to making that change in Dominica and to offering our people a better lifestyle, a more prosperous lifestyle, and to get our people, importantly, out of poverty.
Yes, you could not have said it better, and that brings us to the end of the program. But before we put the final curtain down, one person is saying that we have a catastrophic problem in Dominica, where our people are living by the hundreds for neighboring islands. You have just mentioned that, and that is what we want to curtail. We want to make sure if most of our productive people are here and pushing the work, then we can be productive, we can get results, and we have to be results oriented. So this has been, real talk, and our political leader has been with us all along. And we have to say, thank you, political leader, for your time. You are really steadfast. You are not relenting on the promise to save Dominica, to ensure that we all have shared prosperity and we can equally live a life without having to seek alternative employment elsewhere, because we have enough resources in Dominica that would keep us afloat. So for your time, let me thank you for the work that you do. Let me thank the United Workers' Party. Let me thank those who have been participating. Until next time, we say this has been Real Talk. Till next week, may God bless. Have a good night.
Good night. Good night.